Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to Courageous Custody, your weekly dose of empowerment and practical guidance. I am Renee Rodriguez, the creator of the Custody Blueprint, divorce mediator, and parenting coordinator.
Yes, and I am Achara Tarfa, a level 3 internal family systems practitioner and co-founder of the Global Trauma Institute. And Renee and I understand the unique challenges that protective parents face in the courtroom. And so our mission is to equip you with strategic thinking and emotional support that you need to navigate this difficult journey with strength and resilience.
So every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, we're going to go live on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, bringing you inspiration and insight from stories about courageous parents who have walked in your shoes and emerged victorious in big ways and small, and practical strategies from us to help you advocate for your children and manage your trauma as you go through your custody case. So let's dive in. We are not going to be giving legal advice or therapy.
And if you're feeling triggered, we encourage you to take care of yourself.
Today, we are going to be talking about the role of community and why you shouldn't fight alone in a custody case.
Yeah, so when it comes to a trauma-informed lens, understanding that working and navigating a custody battle when you're trying to parent and either, go to school or work a job and all of that, that can feel oftentimes really lonely and isolating. On top of the tactical isolation that maybe had been created already by the narcissistic and abusive co-parent. So many protective parents, particularly the ones we work with, our moms, experience gaslighting, intimidation, and smear campaigns that are literally designed to cut them off from support, or they're moved entirely to a whole new location where they have no sense of support or community at all. And this abusive co-parent that's in their life may weaponize the legal system to really drain any financial support or emotional resources, making that protective mom feel even more alone and at times a sense of powerlessness. So there's also an emotional exhaustion or self-doubt piece that can come into play here. When there's a constant fight in the legal system or a constant attacks on credibility, protective parents may begin to distrust their own judgment. There's an inner critic part that can come in and take on the voice of the abuser, a voice of the ex, or even the court saying things like, maybe I'm making a big deal out of this, or maybe no one will believe me. So that can cause a psychological isolation and an emotional isolation on top of it. Court-induced isolation is when courts prioritize co-parenting even in abusive dynamics. What this does is it creates a pressure for these protective parents to stay silent because they need to try to appear to be quote unquote reasonable. So understanding how this sort of trap of isolation can occur from these different lenses is going to lend to understanding why it's important to not fight in a custody case alone. So then maybe how do you actually do that? How can community help navigate in a custody battle? How do you form a community if you're someone who's been taken away from the community that you have? For me, using an internal family systems lens starts with providing emotional support to parts inside that could use some soothing or could use some witnessing to the feeling of powerlessness. Our parts often carry overwhelming emotions, and without a supportive community, they may feel abandoned, they may feel unseen. And support groups and trusted allies help to mirror our reality. That can offer validation when gaslighting has made us question absolutely everything that's going on. So we want to make sure that besides maybe just being moved, right, or you're staying in the same area, that you can understand that there's some practical benefits to having community. because it will not just provide a safe place to not just vent, right? There's a term that we coined in trauma recovery, it's called verbal ventilation. Not just a place to vent, a place to grieve and a place to be held as you process these emotions without fear of being judged. It really helps to restore some self-energy when we're able to offer compassion to ourselves and some perspective when these internal burdens of hope, this sense of powerlessness can feel a bit too heavy. So to provide that soothing support in there is really helpful as a first place to start. There's some strategic support that can lend to fighting smarter and not harder. There are allies that can come into play with the legal system when it comes to connecting with a lawyer or advocates like what Renee is, and experts that can help parents make informed decisions through clarity and calm rather than reacting out of fear. Our peer networks can provide referrals to custody evaluators or trauma-informed attorneys, court-friendly therapists or coaches, parenting coordinators. Any of these, not every, I just want to say this, and Renee, you can back me up on this, not every court professional, whether it's a judge or an attorney or an evaluator or a parent, not all of them are trauma-informed.
No.
And the majority of them are not. Let's just say the default is they are not. So having a peer network of people who can provide trauma-informed references is going to be really helpful.
I think too that I think that there's also the opportunity to use your community to find more people who can be part of your team. I mean, when we talk about legal allies, yes, we've got lawyers and we've got the advocates, but when it comes to the experts, I think we don't drill down into that enough. Certainly there's a joke that family court has become expert versus expert, and that's pretty much it, right? Which of course costs an extra unbelievable amount of money in order to get in there. But I mean, protective parents are going to do what they need to do to protect their kids, of course, but some of these experts that we'd like to see parents use, they're not using because they're used to the usual ones. But I'm a big fan of using private investigator PIs where it's allowed. Obviously I think you're right about the advocate, but what I think people don't realize about the advocate and I know you're about to talk about peer networks and other parts of the community, but a lot of times people go into their court appearances, whether in person or via Zoom, without anybody in the room with them, and find out if there are people allowed to be in the room with you, and have all kinds of people. They should be respectful. They should be, because you don't want it to reflect poorly on you. This isn't a chance for them to rah-rah the injustice of the system. Rather, it's to almost, this is how they want the system to be. Well, we can do that too, but we got a lot of people watching. We got a lot of people. I got 7 women behind me watching what's going on. I've got 7 family members behind me. And I think it's really important to think about, should I get the PI even though people don't think I should? Should I spend the money there? Should I get the deposition done? Should I get a consultant? Should I get a strategist? These are the kinds of experts that I see moving the needle better than almost anything in people's cases. And I just think it's important that that's said, because what I find is that a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot at all, actually, it's not true. Some lawyers recommend it, but some lawyers will push against getting a PI or a strategist or a consultant on your case, as if they alone can save you. And that's the sign of a bad lawyer. But there's plenty of good lawyers out there. So you need to go find yourself a good one. But even if you have the best lawyer in the state, I've worked with plenty of people who are working with the high-powered lawyers whose name everybody knows, and they still have a team around them, and it increases the ability for them to make some headway in their case, get control of their lives back, right? Hiring those extra people, that private investigator, or whoever it may be.
Yeah. So, I think it comes down to the question of who can show up for me, right? Who can show up for me? And even if it's just to sit on the bench, so to speak, not the judge's bench, but just the witness, just to witness what's happening in this Zoom room. Because the more people that are watching, it's so interesting how we come into these spaces, Renee, and all of a sudden there's a change in energy. People are watching and people want to be on their best behavior.
Yeah, as
So,
someone who sits in a lot of these things, both on Zoom and in person, there is a very real difference when you
yes.
have at least an advocate in the room, let alone others. And you're not limited to just one advocate usually. As always, check with your courthouse to see what their rules are in the first place.
Yeah. And that's a great segue into the next topic that I wanted to bring up, which is how to rebuild that self-trust. Because when you are subjected to so much gaslighting, you begin to question your own decisions and choices. And that's what gaslighting does, right? It makes you question your own reality. So how then do we rebuild self-trust? And how then do I strengthen my nervous system so that I'm not necessarily in a state of fight or flight all the time, but I'm actually in a space of, okay, I can recognize that I'm in a ventral vagal space, which means I'm in a space where I'm feeling connected and I'm in a space of where I can actually talk. I'm not in a fight, flight, freeze sense. So how do I do that? And one of the ways to do that is like what Renee and I were just talking about, right? Having people show up for you and being surrounded by people who believe you and in you. And that helps your case. So that helps heal damage caused by that gaslighting or even possibly court bias that you may have experienced. Because they can validate and go, did I see that? Did you see what I saw? Yeah, I saw that. So this nervous system co-regulation can occur. There's these safe social connections that can help shift the body out of the survival mode, and it can reduce anxiety and overwhelm. So what does a strong community look like? There's a lot of diverse support layers that we can talk about here. So right then and there, I was just talking about maybe a trusted friend or a family or member or a mentor, someone who can provide that, emotional grounding. Did you see that? Yes, I saw that happen. And not to just complain or, go over and over again, but to really just validate what I experienced is what I experienced. And what happened is what happened. Yeah, I saw that too. There's also survivor and parent support groups. So others who have gone through similar experiences and can share their own real world guidance with you. And like we talked about, those professional and legal allies, whether they're trauma informed lawyers or advocates or court navigators, they are people who can show up for you in those sort of expert ways. And online and local communities, those can provide support, in-person meetups. Really knowing who not to involve is also key because not everyone understands the dynamics of coercive control and family court bias at all. So we want to avoid well-meaning but uninformed people who sort of push that agenda of, just play nice or just co-parent or why don't you forgive them, right? Without recognizing some of the harm that is at play there. We see
Yeah.
and hear that often. Yeah. And I guess in the final takeaway for this is really to heal, and healing occurs in connection, not in isolation. If we're speaking about relational trauma, which is what we're talking about here, then healing is going to occur in relationships. So being able to establish relationships where you can trust again, you can trust yourself to be safe, you can trust that you are safe with that person. And IFS teaches us that no part of us should be left alone. And so then neither should we, right? There are parts of us that connect with self. And it's not good for those parts to feel like they're all by themselves or they're working alone. So having that relationship model outside of us is going to be really important. That strong community reminds protective parents that they're not crazy. As I said, they're not overreacting. They're not alone. And yes, what is happening to them is really happening to them. So the fight for custody isn't just legal, right? It's emotional, it's psychological. It's spiritual often as well. And having the right people around can make all the difference. So not working in isolation is learning how to not work in isolation or fall into those traps is key.
I think
Yeah.
everything that you've talked about today is so important for our clients to pay attention to and really sit and consider. I talked about last episode the fact that, a lot of our moms are losing their cases largely because they're paralyzed. Like they're feeling that isolation, they're feeling that aloneness, and they have to go through their evidence. They have to put all this stuff together, as you mentioned, and it's hard to relive it. And, having that community, another thought that I had was that it also reminds you that you're out of the relationship, at least. Like you're out of being in the same home for them, except the poor people who are still nesting or trying to get their abusive
Yeah.
parent to leave the home. But that piece is done. There's post-separation abuse now, as we talked about, but um, you know, having that community will help with that, getting that support and getting the people. I would also suggest to do things for you that you would normally not ask people to do. Take my kiddos for a while so I can do this. That's community support,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Hey, can someone just recommend somebody economical who can just clean my house every other week so that I have clear headspace and more time to get ready for court? That's, community support. There's a lot of different ways that I think people can even start to parse out everything that's going on in their world and figure out what can others help with, or what are ways in this gig economy, of course, to kind of get
Mm.
some of the stuff off my plate. And many of these protective parents are left financially abused and almost penniless. And so a gig economy can still mean that it's part of our vernacular as a
Yes.
society, that people can come into your home and do this, that, and the just this little piece, just that little piece, just that little piece. Why can't that be friends and family, neighbors even, right? So
Yeah.
I just love
100%.
everything, yeah, that we've talked about today. It's all something that I think protective parents really need to take in and consider and map out really for themselves.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I'm just thinking now of a client who outsourced her laundry because
Yeah.
how much time it took to just do laundry and fold laundry. And really, that gave her space, mental space, to just go, okay, that's at least done and taken care of. And it didn't cost a lot. So it's really important to
Yeah.
ask for help and to understand that we are in sort of this gig economy. This is sort of the new society that we're living in. And that's a very normalized thing now.
Yeah. Yeah. Folding
Yeah.
laundry takes a lot longer than people think it's going to. That's all for this week's episode of Courageous Custody. But before we go, thank you so much for joining us. Whether live or on replay, we are grateful to have helped in any way we may have, even if it was ending with a chuckle. We have some
Mhm.
great takeaways for this week. Remember, isolation is a tactic of the narcissist. It's not your fault that you let go of all these people, right? Emotional and strategic support together are vital. And lastly, support should be attuned and validating.
Yeah, great points, Renee. Next week, join us again, 7 p.m. Eastern here. Like or follow or bookmark us so that you can get the notifications and not miss a thing, because what we're talking about might catch you just when you need it.
Leave your own comments below. And whether you're listening, wherever you're listening, sorry, remember you are not alone. Until next week, stay strong, stay informed, and keep fighting for what matters most. Bye-bye,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.